Welcome back to the Counter Corps. We are in day 2 now, the 16th of May in Operation Brevity and Multiman Publishing's Brazen Chariots, the Battles for Tobruk, part of the Battalion Combat Series. The Commonwealth player had some initial success over here to the east in Hellfire Pass. He secured the primary objective with the 2nd Scots battalion here, Hellfire Pass. The support column was able to move up the Via Balbia, push out the Italian infantry holding the all-around fort on the Via Balbia, exposing the southern flank of Solom. And however, the 7th Armored had very lackluster success out here on the flank. They got held up by a Kettenkrad company, and it sort of bogged them down and prevented them from getting all the way up to Fort Capuzzo. So on this turn, on day 2, the Germans may get some reinforcements from the 5th Light Division, depends on the die roll, but they will definitely get an 88 company and a Panzer battalion that's part of Kampfgruppe Wechmar. So they'll have quite the punch coming in the form of reinforcements. And all they have to do is hold strong. Again, the secondary objectives, the Commonwealth has to capture at least one of them, either Fort Capuzzo, the barracks, or Solom. So with that being said, let's not tarry any longer and get straight into the battle. We have to do a die roll to see who gets the first activation. But first, let's do our other initial preparatory actions. So for the pre-turn phase, we have to determine the weather, but the weather is still hot and deserty, as we say here. There's no air points or replacements, and we just have to skip right to preparing the reinforcements. So for the Axis, the Light Division comes in on a die roll of 5 or 6, otherwise nothing happens. They get hung up either in the desert or outside of Tobruk. So 5 or 6, we get the Light Division, otherwise we don't. And we don't. The Axis rolls a 2. The Light Division does not see combat in Operation Brevity this time around. However, the Axis player does get the 88 company, which he can assign to any unit on the map, and a Panzer battalion, the 1st of the 8th Panzer Regiment, which will come in from the west. And Herf's Panzer Regiment will come in on here. And when Herf activates, he'll be able to bring him in and try to get him into the fight. Now, the 88 company can be assigned to any formation, and probably going to apply it to the support, to support the Frontier Command, who doesn't have any support right now, and that will help give them a +1 on their defense rolls and try to make it more equitable when they're defending against these Commonwealth units. So that's the pre-turn phase complete. Now we do the die roll to see who is going first on this turn on the 16th of May. Red is Axis, white is Commonwealth, should have said, but Commonwealth gets the first roll. Sorry, they get the first choice of activation, whether they want to go or whether they want to force the Axis player to go. With the first activation of turn 2, Commonwealth is going to activate the support group, and the thought is they can advance up the Via Balbia to Solom, secure Solom, and then all they have to do is hold tight against any German counterattack, and the Commonwealth will win this scenario. But first we have to do the snafu rolls. So the support group is at fatigue 0. Unfortunately, they lost one of their fatigue, or they gained fatigue in the last activation. And They do not have any game-specific snafu, and they're not mixed, so their trains are optimal distance for the +1. And let's see what they get on the roll. They get a 4, +1 is 5, so that's a partial activation, which means they only get 1 objective marker, which makes it easy. They'll just put the 1 objective marker on Solom itself, and now they'll move up their infantry columns. Now the dicey part is both C column and B column are on 1 step each. S column would have to kind of move around, which is possible. There's a tiny road connecting these 2 hexes. So they could go half 1, half 2, half. So they could easily get there and put, we'll say C column will travel with them in support for the assist on the attack. Now there's no reason for B column to go anywhere, so just in case, they'll remain in the all-around fort here in Hellfire Pass, so that in the super off chance the Germans counterattack, somebody is holding strong there. Now we will also move the support headquarters up to that fort, so it keeps everybody in command radius, and they're still an optimal distance to their trains. And now we'll do the attack against the Solom defenders, the Italian defenders who can't move. They have a 3 action rating in 2 steps. And of course the S column of the 2nd Rifles have 4 action rating. So now let's go to the combat table. 4 action rating, no red AV support, in a single objective zone. They are going to get the suppression, support group only has 1 artillery point, halved, rounded down is 0 because of the partial activation, so they do not get the suppression mission. But they are assisted for a +1, so they're at 5. The Solom defenders, on the other hand, have a 3 action rating, and they have the +1 support from the 88 company that just moved in. They have +1 from the prepared defense, and they're in a village which counts as terrain for combat for another +1. So they are at +3 overall. So they're at 6 to the Commonwealth's 5 for a -1 on the die roll for the Commonwealth. They roll a 9. -1 is 8 on the combat table. Oh, that drops them down to 1 step loss and a situational retreat. But because they're prepared defense and because they're this independent unit, they don't retreat from Solom. So the S column gets 1 step loss, and they are down to 1 step. And that'll basically be the activation for the support group. They're going to obviously try for another activation because they really want to take Solom. But, the Solom group also suffers a step loss, and they are down to 1 step as well. That's important. Commonwealth, you're not being cheated, don't worry. So, like I said, they will be trying for a second activation, but first they need to roll for fatigue. 1 to 3, they increase their fatigue. And they don't, they skip that. They get a 5. So now we're going to try for that second activation. Like I said, the support group is on fatigue 0. 5 or 6 they need to get a second activation. And they roll a 3. So no second activation for the support group, and they're stymied outside of Solom, which means the Commonwealth player is going to have to find a different place to get his second objective to win the scenario, because he can't move any other units up the Via Balbia to attack Solon because there's the escarpment on this side, and there would be severe mixing if they tried moving up the Via Balbia. So the Solon defenders did their job, held strong, and now the Axis player will activate a formation, and let's see where that takes us. Now that the support group has activated and failed its mission to take Solon, the Frontier Command has a lot more flexibility in order to make sure that the Axis player can win this scenario. So the Axis player is going to activate Frontier, and we will check to see what kind of activation they get. They're in prepared defense, so the best they can do is partial, but there's a lot of snafu modifiers that apply to them. So the Frontier Command is fatigue 0, so they don't get the fresh bonus. They're not coordinated and they're not mixed, but their game-specific snafu is a -3. Their train distance is optimal, so they get a +1 from that. So overall, they're at a -1 on this snafu die roll. They get an 8. -1 is 7, which is enough for the partial activation they need to do something on this turn. Now, because the Commonwealth can't move up the Via Balbia any further, that frees this unit, this infantry, this Italian infantry company that's in the barracks, to move south and basically either get into Kalala and make a bonus for the defenders for having 2 units there. He could also go to Musaid and support the headquarters unit. But I think what he's going to do is he's going to move here into this terrain, because this hex, which has terrain. So if the guards get through this Italian company, if they're going to button hook through around the escarpment, they're going to have to fight a unit in prepared defense in terrain, and then have to go further to get to the barracks. So they're going to have 2 well-positioned units to get through to get to the barracks. So that's that way covered. Now, with Herf in position at Fort Capuzzo, that frees this Italian company to move as well. So to get, I think, here behind, because these 2 hexes are protected by wire. This one obviously has the motorcycle battalion. So to get to Bir Wire would be ideal. And with only 2 movement points, I think they can get there 1.5. So it'd be 1.5 movement points to get to Bir Wire while remaining on our deployed side. That again will stop the Royal Tank Regiment from trying to flank our motorcycle battalion, and will keep the Commonwealth from breaking through and trying to get around our defenses. Now that does leave Fort Capuzzo vacant for now, but they'll have to get through a couple of units, and we have Herf in position to counterattack if that happens. And now what we have to do, I think, is flip this guy to deployed to get that extra point of action rating. And now the question is, do we leave the MG company out in the open? He's doing a pretty good job of stymieing them, but with only 1 step, is it really likely that he is going to do anything more here, or is it worth pulling him back to here? I think it's 6 of one, half the other, half a dozen of the other. We'll just move him back his 1 movement point here. And we will, I think, call the Frontier activation complete there. We don't want a second activation. So I think the Frontier command will be finished. So with the Frontier command finished, play now turns back to the Commonwealth, who is going to be pretty desperate to get a move on and secure one of these secondary objectives. For the next activation, Commonwealth is going to do the 22nd Guards, because it seems like they have the best odds of getting into their secondary objective point, which is now the barracks. They're going to need a full activation, probably 2 full activations to get there, but it's possible, even though they're fatigue 0 and not fresh. So first, though, let's see if we can get a good snafu roll. So they're not fresh, but they're fatigue 0. No game-specific snafus, and their trains are still optimal. So that's a +1 overall on the snafu roll. And with a 9 becomes a 10. They easily get a full activation. So that's a good start for the Commonwealth player. The problem now is they're going to need to drop 2 objectives and lose the double objective bonus because they don't have any more turns to give. So they really have to get the first guy and move on to the second one in order to stand any shot at getting to the barracks in this turn, because this is the last turn. So without further ado, let's get into the combat. For the 22nd Guards, the 1st Durham Light Infantry is going to be the one attacking this Italian infantry company in Kolala. Now the problem is the Guards are going to need 3 units to complete all their objectives. They're going to need 1 unit to attack this company. They're going to need 1 unit to attack this company. And finally, they're going to need another unit to move into the barracks to get their secondary objective. So none of these attacks can be assisted. None of these attacks, well, only one of these attacks is going to have the suppression, and it's a lot is going to have to go the 22nd's way. But first, the Durham Light Infantry is going to get its attack on the 6th of the 12th Battalion. On the combat table, the DLI has an action rating of 4, +1 for the Matildas in support. And then that is basically going to be it, because they're not in a double objective zone. We will give them the suppression mission, I guess, for another +2. So they're up to a 7 total. And that is going to be it. And meanwhile, the Italians have an action rating of 4. They're in prepared defense for 5. And that's it for them. So a +2 on this roll. It's not bad for the Commonwealth. Definitely doable. They're going to need an 11 modified or higher to get the Italians to retreat out of that hex. So let's see what they get. Well, that's just about the game for the Commonwealth, at least as far as the Solom salient goes. With that, they only get a 5. Sorry, I can math. A 5, which gets them 1 loss on the Durham Light Infantry, who are down to 5 steps now. These Italians, don't sleep on them on defense. They might not attack very well, but on defense, behind prepared defense, they can get the job done. So with that, now, since we placed this second objective, let's see if we can actually get there with the Coldstream Guards on their move side with 12 movement rating. They're going to have to go around the zone of control of this guy, but I think we can make it if we go out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we might still be able to make this happen by bypassing this frontier unit in Kolala. We are exposing ourselves to a HERF counterattack, but this needs to be done because we need to get to the barracks. The Coldstream Guards are now going to attack the 1st of the 5th this company here. Since they're on their move side, they have an action rating of 3. They have the Matildas in support still for 4, and no other bonuses here. So the defenders are already at 4. They have an 88 company in support for 5, and they're in terrain for 6. So that is a -2 now on this dice roll for the Commonwealth. And rolling a 6, -2 goes down to 4, and that's 2 step losses for the Coldstream Guards, who now are down to 3 steps. And another Italian unit stands strong. So that's the activation for the 22nd Guards. Remove the objectives. Roll for fatigue. 1 to 3 increases the fatigue. They roll a 4. So no fatigue increase for the 22nd Guards, but we'll go for that second activation. The 22nd needs a 5 or a 6 to get that second activation. So let's see what they get. And they too fail their second activation roll, which means their participation in Operation Brevity comes to a close, and they are not able to secure the second objective point of the barracks. Play now goes back to the Axis player, who will have 2 Kampfgruppe to activate, and not much to have to do it, to be honest. With the Commonwealth stymied around Solon, the Axis player is going to activate Vekmar. And with that activation, we're going to try to attack the flank of the 7th Armor. So let's go to the snafu table. Vekmar is fresh for +1, not coordinated, not mixed, but the game-specific snafu gets us the -1. The MSR is complete, but we do have ghost trains. They are at optimal distance, but the ghost trains cancels out the optimal distance. So overall, we are at a 0 for the snafu roll, which means we need a 7 or more for the full activation. And we get it with the 10. So Vekmar gets his full activation and 2 objectives. And I think we're going to make the double objective this beam infantry column on 1 step. So we're going to remove the screen marker. Now I never know when to remove the screen marker or replace the screen marker, but I'm going to do it now. If I'm wrong, I apologize. So with that, let's get into the battle, get some tank-on-tank action finally. So the first attack from Vekmar is going to be the 33rd moving into the AV zone of the 6th Australian Cavalry. So that means that Vekmar is going to have to do a stopping engagement. Now on the engagement table, Vekmar has a 5 action rating +0 for its AV, but it is in a double objective zone, so it's up to 6. The 6th Cavalry has a 4 action rating and a 0 AV. It is not in prepared defense, and it doesn't have multiple support, so overall this is a +2 for the Germans. And with an 11 +2 gets us way off the engagement table. That's a step loss for the 6th Cavalry and a retreat. So they retreat 3. They don't have a move side, but they get the 1 step loss. And the 33rd Recon Battalion has 1 fire event remaining, and they're going to attack by fire the beam infantry column to try to destroy it without having to enter the combat table. So on the barrage table for attack by fire for this unit, which is not in any kind of terrain, it's not prepared defense, so it needs a 4, 5, or 6 to get this unit destroyed. And they roll a 4, which means the beam infantry column, who is on 1 step, drops to 0 and is removed from the board. Now, because that was an attack by fire, we don't advance after combat, and after our second fire event, the 33rd is now stopped, so that's where it's going to end its turn. Now, the question is, where do we want to put the 3rd Recon Battalion? It's out. This unit is out of range. The 11th Hussars is out of range of the objective marker, so we can't attack it with the 3rd Recon, but we could swing up here and attack Nair, which is I think what we're going to do. So we'll move up here and down, and we'll attack by fire the Nair infantry column. 4, 5, or 6, same thing again, and they roll a 5, which means 1 step loss for Nair. And the 3rd has another fire event, so they're just going to attack by fire again. 4, 5, or 6. You only roll 2 this time. So the 3rd Panzer Recon Battalion will attack Nair now on the combat table. The 3rd Panzer Battalion is going to attack Nair. He doesn't have any support, but he is in a double objective zone. He's not assisted, and Vekmar doesn't have any artillery, so he only has a +1 for 6. On the defense, Nair has no prepared defense. He is not in terrain, and he is by himself. So he's at 4 still, so it's a +2 for the 3rd Recon Battalion on this attack. They roll a 5 + 2 is 7. So the attacker suffers a loss, and the defender retreats 3 hexes on his move side, which he's already on anyway. So the 3rd suffers a step loss. Nair does not suffer step loss, but he retreats. So the 3rd Recon Battalion suffers 1 step loss. It's down to 3 steps. And now, because this is a situational retreat and it's not in prepared defense or key terrain, this infantry column retreats 3 hexes and flips to its move side, which it's already on. That's going to be the attack part of Vekmar's turn complete. Now, Vekmar himself will have to catch up to his units. I'll fix him, his headquarters units, and his trains, and catch up with you on the fatigue roll in a minute. Vekmar just had to move his headquarters unit down this secondary road. His blob is intact. His trains have flipped from ghost to regular and they're optimal. So he's going to try for that second. He's going to try for that second objective. With a 2 or higher, he'll get it. And just barely, he gets a 3. So he gets a second activation, which means he is going to be done for the scenario after this activation. On the snafu table, Vekmar is fresh. He doesn't have coordination, he doesn't have fatigue, he's not mixed. -1 for his game specific. His trains are optimal distance, so he's at +1 now. And let's see what he gets. He rolls an 8, +2 is a 9. So he gets a full activation this turn. And let's see what he's going to do with it. So Vekmar is going to try to press his advantage, continue the counterattack on Nair, try to put him off the board, and as well as try to jump the 7th Armored Headquarters. I am doing hard and soft jumps, so we'll see if they actually do it. So first we'll move the 33rd Recon Battalion, and they're going to do it alone. So first they're going to use their 2 fire events to do an attack by fire on Nair's infantry column. Again, he's in no kind of terrain, so on the attack by fire column, he needs a 4, 5, or 6. Let's see what he gets. He rolls a 5, which means Nair has been destroyed. Again, this is not a combat, so there's no advance after combat. Now, this unit has moved, it's not stopped because it has not used both fire events. So it could attack the 6th Cavalry, but I think what we'll do is we will just move the 3rd Recon Battalion into the hex of the 7th Armored Headquarters, and we'll see if it was a hard jump or a soft jump. Or it was a hard soft jump, 5 to 6, it was a hard jump. It was a 3, so it was a soft jump, which means that the combat unit, the Commonwealth, can reposition the headquarters somewhere else. We're going to say Vekmar stopped there. He was only going to around 0.207. And in actuality, the the headquarters unit was here. I believe that will keep everybody within command radius, and that's logical. Let me just check. It's embarrassing at this point because now it's at this point that I realize the Hussars were out of command radius of the 7th Armor's headquarters. So we're going to have to bite the bullet on that one. Our shame is on the internet now. I'm sure you're all screaming at the monitor, but it is hard to narrate and keep track of everything. So I'll apologize for that one. We'll put 7th Armored's headquarters here on point 207. The 3rd Recon Battalion just missed it. But we'll say that's its activation completed. I don't believe Vekmar is going to do anything else. He will have to move again to keep within command radius. So I'll do that and meet you back on the Commonwealth activation. So with Vekmar completed, I should say I also did his fatigue roll. He rolled a 4, so he is not fatigued after that activation. I'm really bad with showing the fatigue, sorry. But now it is to the Commonwealth player, and with the writing on the wall, I think he's going to throw in the towel and retreat his units back through Hellfire Pass, or at least consolidate his gains around Hellfire Pass. Because with the last activation of his turn, he would have to activate 7th Armored, which just got slammed in the side by Vekmar's recon battalions. And so now 7th Armored is sort of split between two groups, really. It has the Hussars and the 6th Cavalry, which need to link back up with the rest of the brigade, and 2 infantry columns, which got lagged behind on the road, were removed from the game. So the 7th Armored only has 1 infantry column left with which to attack this MG battalion or go around it and attack this motorcycle battalion, or to attack this Italian infantry company. And once it did that, it would have to go further into the rear of the Italian and German line to Fort Capuzzo here, and probably the Royal Tank Regiment would have to be the ones to take that position. And what's waiting for them on the outside but Kampfgruppe Wechmar. So it wasn't looking good for the British, and they don't think that the additional losses that would be suffered from those attacks would be worth the gain, which would be probably momentary. So I think we're going to call Operation Brevity to a close. We got the historic outcome, I think, to this campaign, or to this mission in the campaign. Following this, Rommel would launch Operation Scorpion to retake Hellfire Pass. I don't know if we're going to be doing that one on the channel, or if we're going to be just skipping ahead to the full campaign. But either way, thanks for watching this one, and we'll catch you on the next battlefield. See you for now.